We are joined here today with Stacy Cann. Stacy and I have connected on social media, go figure, and it's the world we live in, right? But nonetheless, she was generous enough to join our podcast here today and talk about her experience, specifically in the franchise space, and from Ted and I's perspective as business owners looking to continue to grow and scale our own junk removal company. We are very eager to talk to Stacy and get her insights candidly, because we are going the franchise route as well. So with that said, Stacy, I'll turn it over to you to just do a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. First of all, I'm in the UK and I have been franchising officially for 8 years. I've been in marketing for 21 years, and actually I was thinking about this before the podcast, and my first job in marketing was actually in a franchise. So technically I've been in the franchise space a very long time, which is awesome. And so I've had a lot of experience with various different companies. What I love is that I've been a franchisee and am still a franchisee myself. I've also supported at head office level as in this like franchisor support. And now what I do is I go out and I help lots and lots of different franchisees and franchisors to get what they want from franchising. And I don't know about you guys, but generally people franchise for freedom. They franchise to scale, and they franchise obviously to kind of get that life balance right, regardless of the franchisor or the franchisee. So I spent a lot of time doing that. Last 8 years I've been a franchisee myself. I've won awards as a franchisee, which I've loved.
Awesome.
And I've helped award-winning businesses, which is always amazing. It always makes me smile to say award-winning, because it's just that nice feeling, isn't it? It's that
Definitely. Are you able to let us know some of the companies and brands that you've been a part of in the past?
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of go right back. So obviously Thrifty was the first one that I ever worked for. Thrifty, car and van rental, they're global. And I was marketing support for their franchisee. He was the largest UK franchisee at the time. So that was kind of my dip in the toe in with Thrifty. And then more recently, so 8 years ago, I went and bought myself a franchise, and I bought into a company called Daisy First Aid. They are all across the UK. The number one paediatric first aid brand in the UK. And we help save baby and children's lives by teaching first aid, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And when the horrible COVID hit, the franchisor basically turned to me as one of her kind of early franchisees and kind of more prominent franchisees, because I had a marketing background, and she said, we need your help. We need to make the other franchisees a bit more stable, a bit more happy and secure while COVID happens. And they would really benefit from your marketing support and kind of strategy work. So joined as a franchisor support there. And since then, what happened was I've been approached by so many franchisees and franchisors over the years and said, oh, you've got to help me. I've seen what you've done for Daisy First Aid. We need to know that too. So beginning of this year, I was like, okay, let's go. And now I work with lots and lots of different franchise businesses, including I've got have contact with franchisees from Diddy Dance and Baby Ballet, who are global franchises. Who else forgot? Savage Martial Arts, and talking to those guys at the moment. So they're island based, but again spreading globally, which is amazing. And more recently been talking to the guys at Spalding Deacon, which I believe are in Florida. I think they're based over with you guys across the pond. So I've been talking to those guys about kind of franchisee and franchisor support there as well. So not quite signed with them yet, but they're certainly in my circle of kind of watching what I do. And I offer an awful lot of free resources to help people that are at that cusp of kind of the franchise business, kind of going, I don't know what to do with my franchisees. And I help a lot of franchisees go, I don't know how to fill my classes and get my services booked. So they're who I've been working with recently. Before that, marketing wise, I've worked with a lot of sports clients. So I was at an agency which are now called DAZN. They're global, but with them I worked with the likes of Chelsea Football Club, Manchester United Football Club, FIBA Basketball League, the ATP with tennis. We were talking about tennis before we hit record. So
Yep.
yeah, so lots of big name clients. Marketing training wise, I've done training with the Telegraph, News International, News UK, Sports Direct, lots and lots of different companies, loads.
Yeah. Two-part question here, Stacy. On the franchisor side, when do they bring you into the table? Is it, do they bring you in when they first have the idea, hey, I want to take my brand and franchise it, or do they get you involved after they've gone through the legal process, they're actively selling territories? When do you get involved there? And then on the franchisee side, same thing. When do you get involved with a franchisee?
From a franchisor point of view, both really. So I have a lot of people who have been running a successful business for X number of years, have decided to franchise. It's a very overwhelming process, as I'm sure you guys are going through. In the UK, it's much easier to franchise your business. The legal requirements are slightly, I wouldn't say softer, but different in terms of getting up and running and kind of going. And regulation is different over here. So I have franchisors that come to me and say, I haven't quite franchised yet, but I want your help in terms of designing that support and that marketing strategy to go out and recruit the franchisees that I'm hoping to bring to the business. I love to work with more, not established, but kind of about a year, 2 years down the line where they've grown quite rapidly all of a sudden. And that point they go, well, I don't know how to help my franchisees now because we've got a few in the door, they're starting to work. Now they're also starting to need a bit more support than I can give them or that I've realised that they need. So I love to get involved at that stage. That's my favourite stage. But equally, I also work with Daisy First Aid, which is a very established franchise. We've got over 100 franchisees.
Yeah.
Still do very similar things for them because they're constantly onboarding new franchisees. So at all stages is probably the short answer. But yeah, the 3 specific stages with franchisors are just as they're thinking about franchising, about a year or 2 in, and then kind of further down the line where they've onboarded a few more and they might perhaps have some franchisees that are not performing as strongly as they'd like, and it's that kind of let's get Stacey involved to help us re-engage them and what we do. So you've got all that to cover.
Yeah.
And then from a franchisee perspective, again, a lot of very new franchisees that come on board get trained up by their franchisors but don't have any marketing background. And most people that buy a franchise are looking for a business in a box. And most franchisors are fantastic at running their own business but have never had to educate somebody in marketing and teach them how to go out and advertise and promote their business and be consistent and go out there and have that resilience that you need in business to be able to kind of take the no's and find the yeses and get your face out there and have the confidence. So a lot of franchisees will come to me about kind of 6 months to a year in and go, I'm really struggling. I've got all the training, I'm not getting the traction.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that's the key moment where they kind of then start to look for help, and that's where I am.
So I have a background in marketing as well, and what really got me into it was when I started my first franchise about 22 years ago, and I realized how much marketing is involved, and I really didn't understand it yet. I'd had more of a sales background, so it's funny you got on this because that was one of my big questions for you. Is how important, I guess this is 2-part, I'm copying Davis, 2-part question. How important would you say your marketing background has been just to your overall success? And number 2 is that something that you would advise someone considering buying into the franchise world is, hey, you need to get into marketing now? Like if you have no background, no problem, at a minimum, start watching YouTube videos on Google ads and on email marketing and you name it. Is that kind of the approach that you take?
100%. Yeah. So I'll tell you my story when I bought my franchise. So I'd had really, really great corporate career. I'd done a huge amount of subscription marketing and digital product launches for all these, massive global sports brands. And I had my daughter, very familiar story in franchising, particularly lifestyle franchises, had my daughter, did maternity leave. While I was on maternity leave, I got headhunted for my dream job. It was £1 billion product launch. It was football related. It was this was like the thing I'd been waiting for my entire career. And 6 months in, it broke me because I had a 9-month-old baby. I was in a new company. I just obviously couldn't deal with it. 16-hour days. it all collided. And I took about 6 months out of the work environment and decided I was done with corporate. So my confidence, although knew I was very good at what I had been doing, my confidence was very low. And I just wanted something that would fit around my family. That was all I wanted. I just wanted to be able to, work reasonable hours, earn a decent wage, and support my family. That was it. That was the criteria. I didn't want to be independent, and I didn't want to be doing marketing specifically at that point, because I'd run an independent consultancy before, found it quite lonely. So that's why I bought into franchising. So when I'd had my daughter, I'd gone and done a baby first aid class when she was about 4 months old. And by the time all this life stuff had happened for me, I hit a point where the company that I had done this first aid class with had just franchised, and that was Daisy First Aid. And having looked at a million dance and song and sensory and other franchises that really weren't a good fit for my personality, I decided to buy into a franchise because I knew that I could back myself with my marketing skills. I didn't know a thing about first aid, not a thing. But I knew that it was something that people needed, and I knew with my marketing background, I could just go out there and make it work. And I thought that I would run it as a management franchise where I just had staff doing the classes and I just did the marketing. And that is basically what I constructed. So with my marketing background, my skills, my experience, I came in, I think I was the second cohort for franchisees. And other people that were franchisees at the time were NHS and services and things like that kind of background, HR, that kind of thing. And because I had this marketing experience, I came in and I got on social media straight away, started getting my face out there, started attending events, started doing all the things that you're supposed to do when you're marketing and launching. And all the other franchisees who'd never done any of that were like, oh, what are you doing? And they copied it because of course you do. And in a franchise, what I love about a franchise is it is collaborative. It's fine that they copy it because they're not a competitor of mine. So I basically would do these posts and then they'd get copied, and then I'd do a live on Facebook, and everyone would be like, oh, okay, we've got to do it because Stacey's doing it. So my marketing background very much drove my success in the business and helped others along the way because they were able to see what I was doing. So I guess from part one of your question, it has absolutely been the making of my success. And I genuinely think I could have bought any franchise, and with my marketing background, I'd have made it a success. Within 6 months of my franchise, I had a pipeline that I couldn't cope with, so I took on staff. Within 2 weeks of my franchise, I bought my second unit because I'm all in. I'm an all-in girl. And within 18 months, I had just signed my third unit, and I found out I was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
But with the marketing background, I was able to continue to scale the business regardless of having a toddler and twins, because I knew the right things that I needed to be doing and where I really needed to spend my time, rather than sitting at home kind of going, oh, no one's bought anything. So I think I know that my marketing background is hugely responsible for the success I've had within franchise, and being, in the best way possible, copied to help other people. And then to answer the second part of your question, I think marketing is, I'm obviously very biased because I'm a marketing geek, but I think marketing is the most important skill to have as a business owner.
Yeah.
Because you can pretty much Google everything, right? You can Google it all. You can't Google mindset, and you can't get Google to put your face everywhere and do all of the things and turn up in the way that you authentically do as a person. So to have the marketing knowledge of how to use that effectively is so key, I think, for any business, but particularly in franchising, where people buy in and they expect immediate success, but it doesn't work like that. And the most common thing I see with newer franchisees is they kind of go, well, I've done everything you said. I'm like, right, go do it again. Like, what do you mean? Go do it again. Go do it more. And you're just doing it. So, yeah. And with my experience, I've helped well over 100 franchisees. And the nice thing is, they follow the formula. So we set them off with a strategy where they design it themselves with my framework. And then they go off and they make a success, and they come back and go, oh, that didn't work. Let's tweak it. But I think if you get the marketing right, it helps the mindset. because it gives you that belief that you can do it, you can go and succeed.
Stacy, it's just a quick follow-up. You said something so interesting, and it's funny because we actually talked about this not too long ago on a previous podcast, Davis. I'm going to keep calling it that. And that is, you said you looked at a bunch of franchises, but they weren't conducive to your personality. I think that is such a great topic that a lot of maybe franchisees don't necessarily factor in, is your personality. And the reason Davis and I talk about that is because in our business, it's very consumer facing, meaning when you get to someone's house in the junk removal industry, you're going in their house. You may be in their house for hours at a time. Whereas if you're in the landscaping business, not at all. You can do everything online. You show up, you mow their grass, same thing with pest control. You're not really interfacing with customers. But that's such a critical piece, is understanding a franchise conducive to your personality. So can you just talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean by that? And why is that so important?
I think it kind of comes hand in hand with that marketing thing again, because if you, to successfully promote any business, and also, for me, I was a new mum and I was basically reinventing my whole career. I'd worked so hard for this whole career and I was walking away from it. I wasn't, but I felt like I was walking away from it and then reinventing myself. And the only way to do that and be a success is to do it in a way that you can show up authentically. So for me, I very nearly bought a music and dance franchise. I can't sing. I can dance. I can't sing. And I could have made it work. It wasn't the end of the world, but I'd have felt like a fraud every day. Every day I turned up. And so then as a business owner, you then start to get this whole piece going on about imposter syndrome as well. So if the franchise doesn't suit your personality, it's always going to be something that you feel awkward about. It's that thing, because people in franchising, I think a lot of people see it as like a hobby. Oh, how's that little business you've got? I've had that so many times, not in those exact words, but in that exact meaning. Oh, how's that little business? Mm-hmm. And if you don't authentically align with what you're doing, you kind of shrink at that point and go, oh, it's okay. I'm still doing it. Like, it's good fun. I'm doing what I can, rather than being that, chest open. Yeah, I'm smashing it, actually. I'm doing really well. I'm really enjoying it, or I'm getting, what I want out of it. And I think, a key part of my philosophy of my training is it's a business. It's not a hobby. Yeah. Go misaligned with your hobbies all day long, but don't be misaligned with your business, because you cannot effectively promote it. Because customers see through when you don't believe in it. Customers see that you don't believe in it, and then they don't buy in. You can't get that trust going, because they see through you.
And on the franchisor side, Stacy, I think this topic is incredibly important, and one that I think Ted and I have looked at our website in particular with that lens, because part of branding and online, what your exposure online looks like, a lot of it is to the benefit of the franchisor, just like it is to the franchisee, because we don't candidly want to spend a lot of time with folks who aren't the fit. And that's not because we're better than that potential prospect. It's just, we want to save our time, just like we want to save your time. We would much prefer to put something together in terms of, and then there's a million, examples you can point to, but a website everybody's obviously familiar with, and usually where folks start. But if you can effectively communicate your brand's voice through how your website flows and the text therein, and obviously the images and videos you decide to put on there, obviously the colors and the names, and you can get a sense, like I've been, just in the last month, I've been to so many websites, and I can tell just how folks, answer almost like a Q&A session, a section, that this is more of like a rigid type of organization. They're very straight to the point, no fluff. And then you've got the other brands that the way they write, or the way they respond to a general question, you can tell they're kind of lively, maybe a fun group. They don't take themselves too seriously, and there's not right or wrong in either regard, but you can get a feel for that brand. So just wanted to mention that. I think that's so important. In kind of along that same vein, and I've kind of come up with this question in probably the last month or two, since I've really gotten more involved actively in these Facebook groups that I wasn't in, earlier this year. For whatever reason, I was spending a lot more time on other social platforms, but I've kind of recognized the benefit of getting not only our company name out over the airwaves more, but really just, again, kind of to what we've been talking about, my face and my name and my thoughts and everything online more, so that folks do know who I am and do know who Ted is and, you know, the faces behind that brand. But being in these groups, specifically Facebook groups, whether it's business owners or, you know, groups like For Sale by Owner, and you've got random folks that pop in saying, hey, I'm looking to buy an HVAC company. There's all different types of figures in there. I feel like, and nobody's come out and said it directly, but one of the questions that's popped up in my brain is, do you think there's a negative connotation to the word franchise, right? If somebody's looking to buy a business, I'm almost apprehensive. And again, this is supported by no facts or figures. It's just my intuition. I'm apprehensive in approaching them saying, hey, have you ever looked at buying into a franchise? And because they may have put a post out like, hey, I'm looking to buy an HVAC company, or I'm looking to start my own business, or maybe, you know, in our space, in the junk removal space, I've started my junk removal company. I've got my EIN, which here in the States is, you know, a government issued ID for your company, but like I haven't actually gotten any jobs yet. And I see that as a potential franchisee. Would they be interested in coming under our brand, even though they've kind of gotten started? But like, do I approach them with, do you want to be a franchisee for us? Or do I position it differently? Like, hey, do you want to come be a part of our family? Like, how do you, I'm starting to like stray away from that franchise word just because I feel like it has a negative connotation, but somebody that's been around the space for much longer, what are your thoughts on that?
I think in the certainly in the UK, there's a huge amount of work that's gone in with the British Franchise Foundation Association, so the BFA, the British Franchise Association, and within like children's activity provider space, that's very well known now. Like, it's really building for franchise. I think when people think of franchise globally, they still generally think about the McDonald's and the Subway and the, you know, the food industry is very much kind of the franchise market for such a long time. I think we're at a really interesting point where we're starting to really see that shift away from food. I very often get up on TikTok, if I've done a video, I've had a few comments where people have said, oh, you know, you're just disguising that it's like multi-level marketing. Like, it's nothing multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
And one of my values is integrity and transparency. You know, you'll see me do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, like including like, you know, the big box that's in front of me right now. And because it's important that you show your values as a franchisor, I think, in any marketing. In terms of that kind of the franchise word, I do think that the associations generally are, you know, your like multi-unit, like food, like big board stuff. And here in the UK, we've seen a really big shift, particularly since COVID, actually. It was happening before COVID, but particularly since COVID now, where people are looking at different ways to earn. People don't want to be hemmed in an office anymore. So franchising feels a bit more of an acceptable thing to do, you know? And like in America, I think there's something like 750,000 franchises, you know, so it's a small industry, but people just assume that it's something else. So I do think there's an education piece to be done around what franchising means, because if you took away the word franchise and said, hey, do you know what, buddy, I can see that you're struggling, I've got a business in a box. Yeah, great. But I think it kind of goes back to the mindset of you're trying to sell them something. Because if you're trying to sell them a franchise, if you were trying to get them in as an employee, you would have a different mindset around how you communicate and kind of what you say to them. But because you're not trying to attract an employee who comes to work for you and you pay them, you're trying to attract in somebody who is going to pay you a lump sum, and then you're responsible for, you know, helping them to grow. I think there's probably some kind of connotations for a lot of franchisors when they start out. I see it a lot where they kind of go, well, I don't want to run a beta, I don't want them to know that I'm a new franchisor. Like, they're going to know as soon as they sign up, and there's only like 2 of them. But there's a lot of mindset stuff that goes in around the connotation, and I genuinely think from other franchisors I've spoken to that it's about that you're trying to sell to them ultimately.
Yeah, and obviously who's receiving the message, I think, makes a world of difference, right? Somebody that's been in the franchising space doesn't care one lick whether you use the word franchising or not. A seasoned investor, if you will. I mean, folks that have their hands around this know what everybody's doing, and that word doesn't, I think, have its negative connotation. It's really those folks, typically a younger crowd, you know, if they're coming out of school and they want to get into this, you know, starting a business, or I guess it doesn't even have to be younger crowd. It could be folks that have gone through corporate, you know, the corporate ladder for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they're sick of it and trying to get out of it. Approaching them with that word could be received negatively. But the lens, the angle that I've looked at fairly, within probably the last week or two is, again, around just how it's presented, but it's really business ownership. And that I feel like sounds a lot better to anybody than it does, hey, come be a franchisee, because a franchisee almost elicits like you're one of many and you're not significant, which that is, from the franchisor side, the complete opposite message we want to send and the complete opposite reality that we want to portray, because you are incredibly significant as a franchisee under our brand because it's your business. I'm only collecting a small royalty off what you do. Like, you are actually doing all the work. You are managing this business, and you keep the lion's share of whatever it is that mainly you generate with this territory. Obviously, we've got a hand in that from overall brand marketing and whatnot. But really, kind of the three pillars that I've associated recently are like, you could go out and start a business on your own from scratch. Nobody knows what it is. You could start it that way. 9 out of 10 of those businesses fail statistically. Or you could go and look at a franchise model, and there's two things there. You could buy into an existing you could buy into an existing franchise, a territory that's not yet awarded, or you could buy into an existing franchise where there's already a territory, but maybe that franchisee is putting it up for sale. And so I think what's really exciting, if it were me as a potential franchisee, I would be very interested in buying into a franchise brand that has not yet awarded a territory, because I get all of that support, all the operations manual stuff, the marketing support, but that business isn't yet established in Tampa, Florida, or Dallas, Texas, or New York City. And I can go really own that versus, oh, this guy did it for 10 or 15 years and he's just, tired of it, putting it up for sale. I'm gonna go take it over. And that life is for a select few, people. There's nothing wrong or right or wrong with that. But I'm trying to figure out how to like conceptually put that message out over the airwaves, so that folks kind of really start to think of it that way versus, just a traditional model of buying business. So I guess no question there, but maybe from your angle, like, what's the most difficult part of what you're doing today, Stacy, with whether you're helping franchisees or helping franchisors? Like, what's the biggest hurdle that you have to deal with regularly?
My biggest hurdle is actually probably very similar to yours from what you've just said. So my thoughts on what you just said there was that, your ideal franchisee typically isn't someone who has ever considered a franchise or thought about franchising, because your ideal franchisee is someone who's probably, trade based, looking for a change or looking to get started and kind of never done anything before. And they have this naivety, as a lot of businesses do, that it's easy. I just get a website and I get a truck and I go off and do it. Mm-hmm. And yes, that happens. That does still happen, but less so now because of the world that we live in and the fact that, you've got to be seen so many times, and that brand is so much more important now. So for you guys, that challenge, I guess, is that education piece that, what is a franchise? It's not a dirty word. It's not a scheme that we're going to come and hoodwink you. It's a business in a box, and we're going to really give you a big step up in terms of, getting started and getting profit and a whole constructed system. You have the booking system, what you guys have had to invest to get your business to where it is now, right? Yeah. And for me, the challenge is similar, because for what I do, it's that franchisors will start a franchise and they'll go, great, I know everything about my business, I'm going to smash it. And some do, but they've never managed people before. And so the management of franchisees, once you've got past kind of 5 or 6, you're not just responsible for putting your business out there and growing it. You're responsible for nurturing this community and keeping them happy. And the responsibility as a franchisor that they've invested in you, and that responsibility you then feel to make sure that they're recouping that investment. And then you see one that's underperforming, or one that's got a significant life event. I've dealt with pregnancy, with illness, with divorce, with you name it. As a franchisor, you're thrown it to deal with, depending on obviously the gender kind of bias that you have as your franchisors, but as your franchisees. But those franchisors that have kind of come on and got started and got going don't know the challenge that happened to them in terms of needing a bit more support it's more than just a Facebook group or a private community. It's more than just a bit of training every now and again. It's keeping lots of different personalities with lots of different skill sets and lots of different experience happy and on track, so that they continue to make the money, but also represent the brand in the positive light that you want it to reflect, the values that you have as a franchisor out through your franchisee. So that's the biggest challenge that I have. And that is generally why they come and find me and say, actually, I'm struggling. Or they'll come to me, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to find franchisees. Help me.
Yeah.
And it's that really sweet naivety of business again, without having that experience, particularly from an onboarding point of view. You get someone in your business, you train them how to run your services. But if you don't have a marketing background, you can't really train them past what you know and what has worked for you to launch a business. And if you launched your 10 years ago, the digital landscape's completely changed. The attention span of your audience has completely changed. So what worked for you when you launched your business is not necessarily going to quite hit, what your friend post-COVID in this particular phase of life is going to find. And from a franchisee perspective, the two fears are that they won't, they've believed in this business and they've got started, but they're not making the steps forward that they assumed that they would. So it's the panic that they're not going to make the money, that they got an outlay and they're not going to cover it, or that it's not going to be that profitable business. And the second challenge is time. Well, I don't have to do all this marketing because I've got the school run to do, or I've got, to go and service the clients, and I've got to do the invoicing and the admin. And so trying to find the time to do all the things then just becomes completely overwhelming for a franchisee who's never run a business before. And that happens time and time again.
Well, on the topic of managing people, that's why I partnered with Ted. I just passed the torch over to him. Sorry, Ted, go ahead.
Just a follow-up to that point on the consulting side, Stacy. So do you prefer to work with prospective franchisees they're considering getting into that world, or do you prefer to work with people that are already a franchisee and they're struggling, or is it both?
I'm at an interesting point, actually. So at the moment, I mainly work with people who are already in that space and are struggling because they have from a marketing point of view, they have the pain point that I can go and talk about because I've been there myself. I know what it's like to be a franchisee. I know what it's like to have a dodgy couple of months where you think, oh, it's all going to fall apart, and rescue it. So that's my audience at the moment. That's my client base at the moment, is those that are struggling. What I'm working on, my passion is basically teaching franchisors how to support their franchisees properly, so that we try and get the numbers down. I think it's something like 30% of franchisees are underperforming, and that's benchmarked against their own franchise set. So 30% in any typical franchise business are underperforming and struggling. So what I want to do is I want to work with franchisors to educate them, to educate the franchisees, to then hit that point where if they are struggling, they know what to do. So later, well, actually not later this year, I'm going to run out of time this year, but early next year, what I'll be bringing out is a course for franchisees that will basically take the newbies that are kind of considering buying a franchise and giving them essentially my marketing degree updated and crammed into just, a couple of weeks course to get them on that right, footing as they invest in their franchise.
Got it. Well, then my last question, my favorite question I have to ask every time we interview someone is, when you look back on your career, thinking about the knowledge you have today versus when you're just starting off in life, maybe right out of college or high school, if you could go back and tell your young self, fresh out of high school and or college, what is the single best piece of advice that you could give to yourself?
The single best piece of advice would be start now. Mm-hmm. Start now. And focus on growing an audience. Doesn't matter what you're going to do with it. If you don't know what you're going to do with it yet, that's fine. But start to grow an audience now. The biggest marketing mistake is people do it all on social media and they have no email list. And if that social media disappears tomorrow, they've got nothing. They've got no did. So I'd go back and tell myself, start now, don't faff around.
Yeah.
I'd have gone self-employed much quicker if I had the benefit of the hindsight that I have now.
It's interesting you said that. I threw up my phone this morning, and I was like, this is the video I'm going to put out first thing in the morning, but for whatever reason I didn't. And it was just whatever random thought popped in my head. I was like, what would I tell somebody today now that I am a business owner after 6 years? And it was just start. Like, I grew up, as a athlete of many different sports, right? Just a kid trying to figure out what I was good at. And always thought, I'd be in this space in some form or fashion. Maybe I'll make it as a player somewhere. Definitely not. Coaching, maybe that works out. Managerial stuff, back office, front office, whatever. And then I went to the sales route. I went to sales route, and now I'm a business owner. But I always had like an entrepreneurial spirit about me, even in my younger days. And I had an interest towards just the general term of business, but I never did anything. Even when I was young, with all the tools back then that I had at my fingertips, which are even, off the charts today with social media and the fact that we've all got a smartphone. But like, that's what I would tell anybody. It doesn't even have to be that you're 10 years old or 15 years old. That's where you're at in your life. It could be 50 or 60 years old, but it would be start. And that's not to say you should take a plunge without doing any sort of research. Like, sure, research the market, what industry you want to go into, find mentors, talk to people. But to that point, like, just start something. And you could start on a very small scale, like growing your personal brand. You could start on a small scale, like maybe you're going to go into, affiliate marketing. I know is a hot topic, but maybe you go and do that just to, get your feet wet. But that is a great point, Stacy, and I'm glad you brought it up. My last question before we wrap up here is, in your world, are you doing anything actively with AI right now that you love, that yields a lot of benefits to you? Literally anything.
It's interesting actually, because I watched one of your other videos talking about AI and how that framework, and I completely agree with what you were saying. So for me, I think because I love to be expressive and creative. So for me to sit and write a blog, I know that's some people's idea of hell, but I love it because that's my creative outlet. So to hand that stuff over to AI, I struggle with. But if I want to content, if I've got like an afternoon where I'm just going to do content stuff, then rather than just start from that blank screen, that's when I jump on and use like chat GPT and just be like, right, okay, give me 4 topics on franchise marketing, or let's kind of look at like case studies. It's good for like research and case studies. Show me some research on, bring me up some statistics. So I'm kind of using it in the same way that I'd ask Alexa to put on Spotify for me. But I kind of want to listen to. But yeah, as a framework, yeah, absolutely, when I'm batch content writing. But I still, again, as a true marketeer, that authentic self, it doesn't matter how good AI is, it can't be me. And if I just hide behind AI, I've lost my USP. I've lost the reason that people buy from. So yeah, as a very light framework, I'll use ChatGPT. But the image stuff, I haven't found any good site that works for images. Like, show me an AI image that actually hits the mark. Like, I haven't found one yet. So if you know one, send it my way. But
yeah. Awesome. Well, Stacy, incredible information. Thank you for joining us. We'll wrap it up there. Ted, anything else from your side?
I guess just the last question is how do people get in touch with you? If they want to get in touch because of consulting, or they want to have you on their podcast, how do they get in touch with you?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll happily be a podcast guest or have a chat. I'm a very chatty person. I like a chat, especially about marketing. So my website is www.stacycann.com. So as it's written on my name here, stacycann.com. I'm on social media as Stacy Cann Franchise Marketing across all the socials. So that's where you'll find me, or drop me an email, hello@stacycann.com. And I'd be happy to have a chat or guest podcast or help you with a specific problem, whatever's going on.
Beautiful. We'll make sure and put that in the description, and I'll have that pop up on the screen as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. Davis, anything else?
That's it. I'll see you at Wimbledon sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know.
All right. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to get in touch with Stacy, you can visit her website at stacycann.com. That's STACEYCANN.com. You can learn even more about Stacy and her background and get some specifics on how she can help you, whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee. You can also email Stacy directly at hello@stacycann.com. That's hello@STACEYCANN.com. See you next time.